for us. So let's go ahead and get them battling. So we see Jack Kiefer here is on the right, playing Grixis. Matthew Jorgensen on the left, playing four color rights. The boss seems to think that Jack is going to have the edge here over a 3-game set. Let's take a look and see.
The other thing, too, is Jack is just like a pint-sized assassin. I mean, this kid's no joke. Like we were mentioning how he went 12-3 at GP Vancouver, which is just phenomenal. And he also, or excuse me, we talked about how he went 12-3 at GP Minneapolis. He also went 12-3 at GP Vancouver, which was a limited tournament. So this kid's really got some magic chops.
Things are going to start off a little slow here. Jack just has a Foreboding Ruins. He's going to reveal a basic Swamp from his hand to get that untapped. Matthew Jorgensen is just going to play an Evolving Wilds and crack it on Jack's end step after he plays a Smoldering Marsh and passes back. This is what's going to happen in this match. Things are going to be a little slow for the first few turns.
Yeah, basically both these decks have mana that's a little on the clunky side. They're going to spend the first couple turns just developing their mana base. They may not even play something until turn 4 in some cases, depending on their draw. But both of them have big plays. Collected Company is going to be a huge impact on the board. Goblin Dark Dwellers is also a lot of times going to be 2 spells in 1 turn. So they're going to be making some big plays on turn 4 and turn 5. But in the beginning, they're just kind of, getting the engine going.
Well, Matthew Jorgensen's going to start things a little early here. He's going to take a point of damage from his Yavimaya Coast, play out an Elvish Visionary, and draw a card. Jack's going to go into his 3rd turn. He's just going to read some bones. He's going to pay 2 life, go to 18, scry a couple times, draw a couple cards. Really going to try and set his hand up for the next few turns in the game.
Yeah, both players are using their life total as a resource. Jack is using his life total to get card advantage, whereas Matthew is using his life total simply to have access to more colors. This 4-color rights deck, it's like almost mono pain lands. It has so many pain lands, and if like one of the secret ways of beating it is if you can just kill everything for a while, they get to a point where they actually just can't cast their spells because they've taken so much damage. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing to say, but sometimes it just takes like 1 or 2 Dark Dweller attacks and they just can't cast anything anymore.
Jack's going to go ahead and bottom the 2 cards off his Read the Bones, draw 2 fresh ones. Matthew Jorgensen's going to crash in with his Elvish Visionary, dropping Jack down to 17. He's going to take another point of damage from that Yavimaya Coast and deploy a Duskwatch Recruiter after playing another copy of Evolving Wilds. And they're not even matching copies. It's just going to throw me off.
So Jack's got a discard spell here, but what you would really like is a removal spell for Duskwatch Recruiter. The timing of this Transgress is good because it comes right before the 4th land, so that he's better able to target something like Collected Company before it gets cast. But the Duskwatch Recruiter is one of the cards that Jack would like to kill given the opportunity because it can generate a lot of card advantage.
Now this Transgress is going to reveal a Zulaport Cutthroat, a Dragonlord Dromoka, a copy of Collected Company, a Brood Monitor. Looks like we have a Llanowar Waste and a Westvale Abbey. So one of the unique things about this deck is with that card, Brood Monitor, alongside something like Eldrazi Displacer, you actually can loop that over and over again.
Yeah, there is an infinite combo.
And if you have something like Zulaport Cutthroat on the battlefield, you just win the game.
That is infinite life gain and life drain triggers.
Ooh, and he did have a Fiery Impulse to take care of that Duskwatch Recruiter. So things seem to be going pretty well for Jack Kiefer right now.
Yeah, and this is exactly what you want to do when you cast a card like Read the Bones. If you take a whole turn off to just draw cards, you want to have some turn down the line where you're casting an extra card on that turn. And Jack being able to cast 2 cards on that turn was really big for him to be able to keep pace after taking his turn 3 off.
Not only just keeping pace, but that Duskwatch Recruiter has a potential to pose a huge problem.
Yeah.
Not only will it allow Matthew to refill his hand using the activated ability, but the flip side reduces the cost of everything.
Yep.
And as we saw from that Transgress the Mine, Matthew's hand's pretty stacked.
Yeah, Duskwatch Recruiter is like a really sick card. It's pretty skill testing because both sides matter, but they matter in completely different ways. So it's not like you can stick with one game plan and then when it flips, stick with the same game plan. You're usually going to play differently depending on which side is active, but it's a really powerful card if you use it well.
So Matthew is going to crash in with his Elvish Visionary, bringing Jack down to 16. He's going to take a point of damage to play that Loam Dryad after deploying a Zulaport Cutthroat, and pass the turn back to Jack Kiefer, who's going to use his Evolving Wilds on his end step. This board looks pretty poised for Radiant Flames if Jack happens to have a copy of that in his hand. He does have 2 in his main deck.
Yeah, he's got the other 2 in the sideboard. They'll definitely be coming in, but he's, He would love one, but I'm not sure if he'll actually have one. He might even be better off just using a single removal spell on the Zulaport Cutthroat and then sweeping later on down the line, because if he casts Radiant Flames now, he would be subject to 3 life drain triggers.
Which is one of the game plans for this 4-color right deck, is you just kind of nickel and dime them with your cheap creatures and Zulaport Cutthroat drains, and then eventually your opponent just gets to a point where they either can't use their lands to make mana if they're playing pain lands, or you just kind of bleed them out over the handful of turns at the end. Yeah.
Which is also important because Matthew is a little worried about just bleeding himself out. I mean, you know, we just saw his turn 4 and he's already down to 17 from his own mana, so.
Now here we have a Transgress the Mind. It's going to reveal Dragonlord Dromoka, Westphal Abbey, and that aforementioned Brood Monitor. This is a pretty interesting spot. Like, he'll be able to take one of the 6 drops, but because of that Loam Dryad, if he doesn't have a way to remove it, one of those 6 drops is going to hit the battlefield next turn, because he can play the Westphal Abbey and then access 6 mana.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this is Jack is certainly afraid of the infinite combo that can come up. Matthew already has 2 out of the 3 pieces available, but the Dragonlord Dromoka is kind of hard to kill. Jack doesn't have that many removal spells for it, and so if it sticks on the board, he just might not be able to deal with it. And it's a fairly fast clock, so Jack is hoping that he can dodge the combo or disrupt it before all the pieces get assembled, and taking the Dragonlord Dromoka reveals that Jack probably doesn't have a Ruinous Path in his hand.
After playing a Jace Fritz Prodigy and passing back, Matthew Jorgensen is just going to use that Loam Dryad along with some lands to play his Brood Monitor. Now this is going to come along with 3 1/1 Eldrazi Scion tokens. This is going to put 7 creatures on the battlefield. A perfect time for Jack, or a perfect play for Jack here would be to find some way to get rid of that Zulaport Cutthroat and then use a Radiant Flames for 3. It could just be that he already has the Flames in his hand and he set this up by getting rid of that Dragonlord Dromoka. And, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised this kid is a young master.
Yeah, that would be a great play. There would be a lot of life drain triggers from the Zulaport Cutthroat, but considering that Jack would basically be leaving Matthew empty-handed, I think he would take the life drains happily just to, you know, generate so much card advantage and leave Matthew with so few resources.
So he's just going to use his Jace Fritz Prodigy. It's going to turn into Jace Telepath Unbound. Let's see what he decides that he wants to do here. That Fiery Impulse is in the graveyard as a way to get rid of that Zulaport Cutthroat and could clear the way for a Radiant Flames if he happens to have it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Jack wants to navigate this. He's pretty far behind on the board and he certainly needs to catch up. He can just die to Matthew attacking with what he has on the board over and over again, so it's really on Jack to get something going.
So it looks like a Grasp of Darkness is going to take care of that Zulaport Cutthroat. The life gain trigger is going to bring Matthew up to 18 and Jack down to 15. Oh, wow. But there is the Radiant Flames.
Dude, the pint-sized assassin just decimates Matthew. That was huge. That was literally like picture perfect also. Get the Zulaport Cutthroat off the board and then wipe your...
And he just walked him into it by getting rid of that Dragonlord Dromoka, allowing him to cast the Brood Monitor. And now he doesn't even have to use the minus on his Jace to flash back something like Fiery Impulse. He just gets to plus it up to 6 counters. Matthew has to rebuild here, but one of the good things about Collected Company is that can help you rebuild real fast.
Yeah, indeed. And having access to instant speed removal, I almost wonder if maybe it would have been better for Jack to just eat the damage from Zulaport Cutthroat and save the instant speed removal spell. The way that he played it shows that he values his life total more than the extra removal spell. And given the situation, I don't think it'll come back to bite him because he's already pretty far ahead on cards, but it'll certainly be something to watch as the game goes on.
Yeah. Jack's just going to play a Smoldering Marsh, or a Foreboding Ruins tapped. It's going to plus his Jace, Telepath Unbound on the Elvish Visionary, and pass the turn back to Matthew, who, thankfully, for Jack, did not have a Collected Company on his end step because that could have been pretty backbreaking.
He does have the Westphal Abbey, though, and every random 1/1 is going to matter a little bit. So Jack would really like to find something like a Goblin Dark Dwellers just to get some pressure on Matthew. This is sort of the point where Jack needs to find some way to close the game because eventually Matthew will rebuild.
Well, Looks like we got 6 mana coming here. That's going to be for a Dragon Lord Silumgar. He is going to be able to snag that Elvish Visionary, but now he does have some pressure, as we mentioned, and Silumgar being a flying creature, Matthew's not going to be able to put up much of a defense for it, as these 1/1 black and white cleric tokens that are being put into play by the Westvale Abbey, they don't have flying.
Yeah, all the 4-color, 2-color right decks, they're really good at chump blocking things on the ground. Granted, Matthew doesn't have much of a board to deal with a ground creature, but generally speaking, that's true. And this Dragon Lord Silumgar having flying is quite relevant.
Looks like Matthew does have another copy of Zulaport Cutthroat. Just going to pass the turn back. This could potentially change the math as the turn goes, or as the game goes a little deeper. But with Jack's deck being chock full of removal and having an active Jace, I can't imagine that Zulaport is long for this world.
And because the Zulaport Cutthroat does so little on the board right now, I would assume that Matthew has a Collected Cupping to fire off. Otherwise, I think he would have just activated his Abbey, because the Zulaport Cutthroat on this board isn't actually much better than a random 1/1. And I think if I was Matthew, I'd probably save that Zulaport for when I could sequence 2 spells on that turn. So if Matthew doesn't have a Collected Company, I'm going to be like a little surprised. That's what I would expect, but maybe he doesn't have it.
Jack's going to attack with the Dragon Lord Silumgar and that Elvish Visionary. Matthew will chump off with his 1/1 Cleric token on the Visionary. They're going to trade. And now here comes the play from Jack. 5 mana. This might be a Dark Petition. He does have Spell Mastery, so he is going to get triple black from this Dark Petition. We might see something like Kalida's Trader again. Yeah,
Kalidas is really one of the cards that does a lot in this matchup. It makes it so that the Zulaport Cutthroat effect is rendered effectively useless. When creatures die, they do not trigger it. Although I do believe that tokens will still trigger the Cutthroat, even if a Kalidas is in play.
Yeah, because Kalidas only references card.
Right. So that's a rather interesting rules interaction that confuses a lot of people.
But Jack Kiefer has enough removal in his deck, like we're going to see. Oh, no, he's just going to plus the Jace on the Zulaport Cutthroat. But again, Jack has enough removal in his deck that this Kalidas is going to turn into a lot of 2/2 tokens.
Yeah, and I mean, Jack could even ultimate his Jace. He's just kind of winning on all fronts. He's got the hate creature. He's got a good creature for attacking, and he has a Planeswalker about to ultimate. And I'm pretty sure he has more cards in his hand. So I would, consider this wrapped up, and I'd assume that Matthew is probably just thinking about how he's going to sideboard for the next game.
Well, Jack's going to go ahead and use Kolaghan's Command. It's going to deal 2 damage to the Zulaport Cutthroat. Make Matthew discard the last card in his hand. Jack is going to get a 2/2 zombie token from that Cutthroat being exiled by Kalidas. And imagine we're going to see some attacks here.
Yeah, and Matthew's top decks for the last couple of turns have been pretty bad. I mean, it's just basically been like land, land, land. So if I was in Jack's shoes, I definitely would have assumed Matthew had a Collected Company, but as it turned out, he just had nothing.
Jack has a Smoldering Marsh to add to his board. He's going to crash in with that Kalidas for 3, Dragon Lord Silumgar for 3. He's going to gain 3 life on the combat. Let's see if he's going to flash something back. He is going to flash back the Dark Petition with that Jace. That's pretty nice. He is going to get 3 mana here.
And it looks like he's pulling Chandra to the front, which, if there was any way to make it so that he was winning the game even more, getting a Chandra would be it. And the Kiefer kids, like the whole family's on tour. For the summer, yeah. Jack is the middle one, but he's got an older and a younger brother who are both here playing, and their mom and dad is here, and they're making a road trip out of the Open Series. They're just driving from like open to open with some family sightseeing along the way.
Yeah, I believe they're planning on hitting every Open in the month of June.
Yeah.
So they're here. They're going down to Orlando, maybe making the drive over to Dallas. I believe they have plans to hang out in New Orleans.
Yeah, that's sweet.
For a little bit on the way, so hopefully they don't get in too much trouble.
Yeah, and this really is the way of the future. I expect, when we're starting families, everyone's parents is just going to be doing this, driving their kids around to Magic tournaments over the summer, and I mean that's just the way things should be.
Well, Matthew was able to find a copy of Catacomb Sifter to rebuild his board a little bit, but I think that this Chandra is going to put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I think, that the nail's already in the coffin. I think Chandra's maybe got the shovel and is digging the grave, and Matthew's looking to be put to bed.
The +1's going to make a couple 3/1 elementals. Jace is going to flash back that Fiery Impulse with Spell Mastery on the Catacomb Sifter. It's going to give him another zombie token.
And that looks like a lethal attack.
And Matthew's going to go ahead and scoop that one up. So Jack Kiefer is going to take game 1 on Grixis control over Matthew Jorgensen, who is on 4 color rights. So let's go ahead and take a look at the player's sideboard as they start to sideboard, and we can see if we can figure out what they're going to do. Matthew has 1 Duress, 1 Deadweight, 3 Ultimate Price, 3 Matter Reshaper, 2 copies of Negate, 2 Reality Smasher, and 3 copies of Thought-Knot Seer. How do you think he's going to sideboard here?
So I think Matthew is probably going to bring in a lot of cards. Usually these 4 color rights decks, when they're so synergy based and they're prone to removal, that when they get faced against a heavy removal deck, they really have to do like a pseudo transformational sideboard. So I would expect all the creatures to come in, the Matter Reshapers, the Reality Smasher, and the Thought-Knot Seer. And I can also see the Negates and Duresses coming in also. I don't think that'll bring the Deadweight or Ultimate Prices. They can tag Goblin Dark Dwellers and Jace and Kalidas, which are pretty important. So, you can make an argument for Ultimate Price, but for the most part, Matthew is going to be looking to just jam a bunch of threats on the board that are hard to deal with and try to run Jack over, because even if Matthew is able to answer some of the stuff that Jack does, Jack is still going to be favored in the late game and is going to have a lot more card advantage. So, if you kill his first Jace, but you take too long to kill him, he's just going to draw another.
That makes sense. I do like trying to pressure Jace with your creatures instead of trying to bring in a bunch of, just a handful of removal spells.
Kalidas is a little harder to pressure in that card, though, so,
Jack has 1 copy of Dark Petition, 2 Dragon Master Outcast, 3 Duress, an Infinite Obliteration, a Languish, an Ob Nixilis Reignited, 1 Pia and Kieran Nalaar, 2 Radiant Flames, a Silumgar's Command, 1 Transgress the Mind, and 1 Virulent Plague. How do you think Jack is going to sideboard?
So in a lot of ways, Jack's deck is set up pretty well. He's got a couple potent threats that can generate a lot of value and run away with the game, but in some spots his removal isn't situated particularly well for the matchup. Like Kolaghan's Command, for example, it's not a particularly good removal spell in this matchup. So I think for the most part he's going to be looking to upgrade cards. He definitely wants to bring in the Radiant Flames for the extra sweeper effects. Ob Nixilis is one of the better ways to kill a Reality Smasher, as well as just kill something and gain some value, and it's pretty known that these 4 color rights decks bring in Reality Smashers, so I definitely think Jack will bring up Ob Nixilis. Languish, just having another sweeper can be good. I've seen some people bring in Dragon Master Outcast. I don't think that Jack will do that, but he might. He may do something where he has Dragon Master Outcast when he's on the play, but not when he's on the draw. So that'd be interesting to me if he brings it in or not, but I definitely think the key players are going to be the Radiant Flames, Languish, and Ob Nixilis.
I could definitely see all of that. Virulent Plague is also something that you might want to look at because of the Eldrazi Scion tokens. But with enough Languish and Radiant Flames, those really aren't going to be a big issue, and that's primarily there to fight something like Secure the Waste that can happen on your end step.
Yeah.
Now, we see Jack Kiefer here and his brothers are getting started pretty early, trying to pave their way to have success on the SCG Tour. One of the other ways that you can do that and get in practice during the week is by playing in SCG Game Night.
Oh, yeah.
So at every game,
an otter spell.
Yeah, at every game night you have a chance to get some special premium tokens and pins. Right now, every week in June, we currently have Otter Spell. So as you guys, when we get back to our beautiful faces, you can see the spell that we have on. I really like this one.
Yeah.
Do you know if we have a name for this otter yet?
No, but I'm sure Twitter could help us out.
Twitter can definitely help us out. So you can get Otter Spell in June. In July, you can get, this is my favorite one so far, Snipcaster Mage. It's a crab wizard. 2/1, you can get tokens and you can get pins. Again, it's every week in July. And then we also have another one in August. You get Young Burrowmancer. So I honestly feel a little slighted that there's yet another 1/1 red elemental token, but this one is cool enough that I don't really care. I'll probably even switch over to these for my CVM tokens.
Yeah, these are all of these are just like fun and sweet.
So go.starcitygames.com/game night for more information. If you want to have your local game store start running the starcitygames.com game night, make sure you let them know. They can go ahead and get a hold of us and get set up with that. You can get those sweet tokens and pins. Young Burrowmancer is awesome.
Yeah, I played green-white tokens at the GP last weekend, and I took great care in the tokens I used. And one of my favorite things was I had a Reed Duke token as the 2/2 knight that's produced by Gideon. And I would play it, and I'd look at my opponent and I'd be like, can you beat this card? So having like sweet tokens is like, I don't know, it's always fun.
I definitely enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like using cool tokens. I have I keep wanting to say fiance or girlfriend, but I actually just got married last month. So my wife had 2 tokens commissioned of our 2 pugs.
I saw that on Twitter. Those are awesome.
From RK Post. And I tend to use those a lot. They're pretty neat. All right, so game 2 is going to start here. Matthew Jorgensen is going to be on the play. He's just going to pass after playing a Land Noir Waste. Jack Kiefer has a Foreboding Ruins. He's got a basic Swamp.
And again, both of these players have a few plays that can make on turn 2, a few more that they can make on turn 3, but things are really going to get going on turns 4 and 5.
We've got a basic island for Matthew Jorgensen, and we see him deploy that Matter Reshaper. So it looks like he might be using that same sideboard plan that you were talking about, where just bringing in all of the creatures, getting rid of some of the bad cards that can't really attack and pressure, and just try to end this game quickly.
Yeah, one of the nice things about the Eldrazi in this format are it can line up well against certain removal spells. Like Ultimate Price is something that every black removal deck is going to have some number of. And Jack may keep a hand that has, turn 2 Ultimate Price, turn 3 Read the Bones, and be like, perfect, I can do this all on curve. And then Matthew plays a card that can't be targeted by Ultimate Price, and it can be a lot tougher for Jack to deal with.
So Jack is just going to play a basic and use a Read the Bones. Going to pass back to Jorgensen, who's going to attack him down to 15 and then fire off a Collected Company, so we could have some fireworks here.
So Matthew is basically doing exactly what he wants to do as far as executing his game plan. He's played Collected Company and Matter Reshaper. They're both threats that are extremely hard for a control deck to deal with. Both of them are also generating card advantage. So.
So we've got a Matter Reshaper. Let's see what else we can find with this company.
Yeah, and if Matthew could, he'd probably just put infinite Matter Reshapers on the board, I mean, that is it's kind of a hard card for Jack to deal with.
Well, I will say Duskwatch Recruiter is pretty good, even if it's not a Matter Reshaper.
Yeah, and so Jack really wants a sweeper here, but if he sweeps, those Matter Reshapers are both going to trigger, so Jack probably needs to just deploy multiple sweepers.
Well, he does have a Sunken Hollows, something like Languish, Radiant Flames. He could have a bunch of them in his deck post-board. Those Matter Reshapers do have the potential to replace themselves, or even just put lands on the battlefield, which still would be a pretty good thing.
Yeah, the other thing that Jack could do is just play a Goblin Dark Dwellers next turn. One big blocker can really put Matthew in a tough spot. That said, you never know if a card like Reflector Mage is waiting in the wings, or if Matthew brought in those Ultimate Prices.
Well, Jack did have a Ruinous Path to take care of the Duskwatch Recruiter. Matthew's going to crash in for 6, bring Jack down to 9. This game could be over quickly here in a couple turns, especially if Matthew has something like another Collected Company or a few more creatures to actually add to the battlefield.
Yeah,
Eldrazi Displacer.
And because of those Matter Reshapers, Matthew is basically free to commit more threats to the board without really having to fear a sweeper, because he knows the first sweeper isn't really going to answer his board. So it might as well just commit more and force Jack to have it, otherwise run him over immediately.
And here we have that Dark Dwellers like you were talking about. This is going to allow him to replay the Ruinous Path, take care of that Eldrazi Displacer, and now he has a 4/4 to put in the way of these 2 3/3s. But if Matthew has something like Reflector Mage, even an Ultimate Price that he brought in out of his sideboard, or he could simply have just another Eldrazi Displacer to bounce and tap down that Goblin Dark Dwellers. Just attacking Jack down to 3 seems like a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I could even see a situation where Matthew just like attacked
attacks.
anyway, you know? I mean, the Matter Reshapers, you can just cash them in for another card, and it's pretty advantageous for Matthew to try to end this game before Jack gets to cast all the cards in his hand. One of the best forms of card advantage is to just make sure you end the game before your opponent gets to cast all their cards.
This is actually, in my mind, a really good example of just why Collected Company is an insane card.
Yeah.
Like, for 4 mana, he was able to play 5 mana worth of creatures. Sometimes you can even get 6 mana worth of creatures. And when he's on the play and already ahead of turn on Jack, this actually just puts him like way far ahead with that Collected Company.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Zulaport Cutthroat was probably one of the cards that got trimmed, but Matthew can also do things like deploy a critical number of threats to the board where Jack has to sweep, and then have one of them be a Zulaport Cutthroat, and then like a sweeper may end up killing Jack. So it looks like right now they're just like resolving the Matter Reshaper trigger, trying to figure out if that land goes directly into play or not.
Looks like it is a May ability, so normally it would go onto the battlefield. However, it just went into.
So Matthew is sticking to the theme of just playing threats that are hard to deal with. Dragonlord Jamoka, you can't grasp in darkness, can't ultimate price, doesn't die to any of the sweepers. So it's basically Ruinous Path or bust, and
He's already used one.
he's already used one, yep. Ob Nixilis would be able to deal with it.
It's like, oh, we do have another Ruinous
Do you have the
Path.
other one?
He can't really go on the offensive just yet.
Oh no.
He's just going to pass the turn back.
And this Dark Dwellers is, you know, has a lot of value on this board. This is one of the highlights of playing a deck that's a little more mid-rangey and has some creatures rather than a dedicated 100% removal spells like Drago kind of removal deck, is that Jack is able to blank potentially multiple creatures with this Goblin Dark Dweller body.
On top of just getting the value out of recasting one of your spells,
Right.
which tend to be either a removal spell or a draw spell.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing a control deck, just having a wall that brings a removal spell with it is fine.
Like Catacomb Sifter is going to bring along a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion. Let's see if Matthew has something else he can add to this board. He has another Catacomb Sifter, so this is going to put a lot of bodies on the battlefield.
Yeah, and so Jack is probably in a position where he needs to sweep the board, but Matthew will get his Matter Reshaper trigger, potentially putting another threat back in its place, and he's also going to be able to get a lot of scry triggers. So he may be able to just, you know, scry something like a Reality Smasher to the top of the deck, and that's going to put Jack in a tough spot. So Jack definitely has the tools to get out of this, but he's definitely behind. Another Goblin Dark Dwellers would do a lot.
Yeah, Dark Dwellers would be good. Looks like he also has a copy of Kalidas in his hand, which might allow him to start stabilizing because of
the
the
life
life
gain would be very relevant here.
Let's see what Jack Kiefer's going to do.
Also, if he can play Kalidas and have Grasp in Darkness mana open just to threaten it, that puts Matthew in a really tough position because an all-out attack could be an utter blowout.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ooh.
I wonder if this means Languish.
Just going to attack with the Dark Dwellers. Dark Petition.
So I would expect Dark Petition for Languish. Dark Petition for Radiant Flames would only be for 2. And it might be safer just to keep the Dark Dwellers back if you were going to cast Radiant Flames.
Yeah, I wonder if I wonder if you can just safely read this as a Languish and chump with the 2 Scions on the attack.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. That said, though, it could have also just been Radiant Flames, in which case he'd probably also attack.
Well, if you chump and then he Radiant Flames, he loses his Dark Dwellers.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm not sure how much Matthew really cares about his life total.
That's also fair.
Yeah.
All right, so we're verifying how many scry triggers we're going to get off of this Languish. Matter Reshaper is also going to resolve. Ooh, he'll actually be able to scry into a card that he can put into
which is pretty
the
cool.
battlefield with Matter Reshaper. So we're going to get 8 scry triggers here, and If you brought in Reality Smasher, Reality Smasher doesn't just actually win here, so it's kind of risky to scry to a Reality Smasher.
I almost think one of the best things you could get is just like a Duskwatch Recruiter. I mean, it only attacks for 2, but just because you get to sink mana into it. A Duskwatch Recruiter just on the board, attack Jack down to 4, and then you have enough mana for 2 activations, which is quite good.
Yeah. Not only that, but you can activate it twice.
Thought Nasir is decent.
Yeah. Let's see what Matthew has going on now. Looks like he picked up another copy of Yavimaya as his draw for the turn. That'll give him 7 mana to work with.
So the one the one language that Jack has is a little uncommon, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Matthew expect that Jack doesn't have any more of them. Usually it's Radiant Flames as the primary sweeper in this deck. So I would expect Matthew to commit more threats to the board, especially obviously now after seeing Jack's hand.
It looks like Thought-Knot Seer is going to reveal 2 copies of Kalitas, what looks like another Dark Petition, and then there's another black card in there that I can't quite tell what it is. Another copy of Read the Bones. So Jack's hand is pretty good.
Wow, and this is a big play. So Matthew potentially, if Jack doesn't draw a removal spell, Matthew can blink Jack's blocker and just attack for the win on his turn. So this is pretty big.
It looks like Jack picked up a copy of Fiery Impulse for the turn,
Ooh.
which is going to let him kill that Eldrazi Displacer and get a 2/2.
And he certainly wants to main phase it. He does not want to wait.
Yeah, does not want to give Matthew the opportunity to untap.
Yep.
I'm going to pass the turn back to Matthew. This would be a good time for Reality Smasher or Collected Company to show up. Let's see what he finds.
And Matthew, I mean, even though Jack has another Kalitas in play, Matthew might want to just attack anyway and try to force a trade with Kalitas.
Ooh, well, here's the Collected Company.
Double Reflector Mage one time.
Let's spin the wheel and see what we can find.
And if Matthew does hit a Reflector Mage, I think he just bounce the token.
I agree.
And leave the Kalitas there.
Ooh, well, there's the Reflector Mage. I was going to bounce the Kalitas. Now he's going to attack with the Thought-Knot Seer. We're going to get a
Well,
chump.
I guess this leaves him in a pretty good spot because this means both the Kalitas in his hand are essentially dead.
Yeah, I like that.
Always have to remember that.
Oh, and we have a Chandra off the top for Jack.
Wow.
-4 is going to take care of all of the creatures on the battlefield. He is going to get 3 life gain triggers, bringing Jack down to 3. He's going to go up to 13.
That was definitely the perfect top deck.
And now Jack, did he not draw a card from the Thought-Knot Seer leaving the battlefield? I was too busy flailing about at the top deck.
I was kind of rolling my eyes at the Chandra.
Oh, well, here's another Zulaport Cutthroat and a Westvale Abbey.
So that's not much. Matthew, so far this game, has been successful in just deploying hard to deal with threat after hard to deal with threat. But now Jack has an opportunity to stabilize with a Kalitas. And, you know, getting your opponent down to 3 is not 0.
Yep.
Wow, and we can see Chris Anderson looking over. Is that Chris Anderson in the background?
That is.
Yeah, the coach Cran. He's basically the sensei of these Kiefer kids, looking on his young Padawan and watching his plays.
Let's see what we're going to have along here. I think he's deciding if he wants to use his Dark Petition along with the Kalitas. He's just going to play Kalitas and pass. Matthew's going to pay a life, make another 1/1. Go down to 11.
So if Matthew can actually flip Westvale Abbey, that's going to be pretty hard for Jack to deal with. He basically just has Silumgar's command to bounce it. But the Kalitas can sort of deal with it in a roundabout way, just becoming a bigger lifelinker.
Here's another Thought-Knot Seer. It's going to reveal a Dark Petition, a Read the Bones, and another copy of Goblin Dark Dwellers. Oh, a Kalitas, not a Dark Petition. So he's going to take the Dark Dwellers. He's going to leave Jack with a Kalitas and a Read the Bones. That Read the Bones is a pretty risky proposition at this point.
Yeah. Although, you might just have to cast it. If Jack didn't draw something good, I would probably cast it. You need to draw something.
I agree.
And you've got the Kalidas to potentially gain some life.
This could be a Radiant Flames.
Radiant Flames would be very good.
Would allow him to make a 2/2, and then he could even sacrifice it to put counters on the Kalidas, get in for some damage.
Although I think his draw for the turn might have been that Evolving Wilds.
Oh yeah, it was. He's thinking about the Read the Bones. He's going to fetch with the Evolving Wilds.
Yeah, do a marginal amount of deck thinning
before he Read the Bones.
Also, if you're going to scry 2 cards to the bottom, you don't want to just shuffle them back to the top.
I agree.
So good sequencing on Jack's part.
He also can just attack with this Kalidas and then play another. Just as a way to gain some life.
Not really the game plan he wants to be on, but he does have to worry about a Reflector Mage or Eldrazi Displacer or an Ultimate Price of some sort. Like, being at 1 life with a single blocker is certainly a scary place to be. So, and after having played that Chandra, that was the perfect draw because he, he had his Kalidas bounced and he needed to draw something and he drew Chandra to wipe the board. And then he was able to restabilize with Kalidas, which was pretty perfect. And now, after the Read Bones, he hits the removal spell that he needs. So Jack has been able to draw just enough to stay alive, and Matthew has continually drawn just enough to put pressure. So this has been a pretty good game. Both decks are firing on all cylinders.
It's been really back and forth, and I feel like both players have just been half an inch away from taking over the game.
Yeah, they really have.
Either on Matthew's side closing it out, or Jack's side just completely taking control of everything that's happening.
Yeah, game 1, Matthew's draw was a little weak, but it's nice this game to see both players having good draws and really showing what each deck can do.
So Jack's not going to attack with his Kalidas. He's just going to pass the turn back. That 1 zombie token can be sacrificed to make Kalidas a 5/6, which gives him the potential to gain a bunch of life. This is a pretty decent draw for Matthew, actually, since now he's able to deploy a creature to the battlefield, and he can use Westphal Abbey, which means he's only 1 cheap creature away from being able to activate that Westphal Abbey.
Yeah, another Loam Dryad off the top, and he'd be able to flip it.
In fact, the Loam Dryad even gives him a mana when he's needing to play creatures next turn.
Ooh.
So Grasp of Darkness is going to get rid of that Thought-Knot Seer, get Jack another token after he already sacrificed the previous token.
And he drew a Radiant Flames, so I think Jack has just about done it. I have to imagine that he attacks here.
Wow, this Kalidas is going to go real big here.
Yeah, Kalidas is going infinite.
He's going to attack for 5. Man, Matthew was so close.
Yeah, he was really close. This is so common with the control decks, though. You stabilize at 1 life, and then you get control of the game, and you bounce back.
Well, the 1/1 is going to chump block Kalidas. Jack is going to sacrifice the other zombie token.
And one of the big reasons to just chump block with the token is the token chump blocking isn't going to cause another zombie token to be put to the board.
Looks like Jack's going to Radiant Flames to take care of that Loam Dryad.
Wow.
And that's going to give him another zombie token.
So pretty aggressive use of Radiant Flames, but I think Jack is just looking to close this game out as soon as possible. He knows it's within reach, and
not only that, but it's like the Radiant Flames there was just like a kill your guy, make a 2/2.
Yeah.
Which, with Matthew being empty-handed, I don't think it's going to get much better than that.
Ooh.
Here's an Eldrazi Displacer. That's going to be real good. That will allow him to bounce that Kalidas, get rid of the counters, keep it tapped down. Kind of wishing we had that Radiant Flames.
Yeah, I did think it was kind of an aggressive use. Jack might have been a little hasty firing that off. He's still probably going to be in okay shape, but now he's in a situation where he kind of needs to draw a removal spell. And we kind of saw this in game 1 also, where Jack fired off the 1-mana removal spell before his Radiant Flames to clear the Cutthroat and make it so he took less life gain triggers off of it. And I thought that was, he could have been a little more conservative with his removal spells, but it seems like Jack just, you know, across the board would just play things a little more aggressively, and it's worked out for him, you know, so can't really make a too big of an argument against it.
Eldrazi Displacer is going to bounce that Kalitas. Now here he can actually just bounce the zombie token, clear the way, get in for 4. Man, Eldrazi Displacer is quite the magic card.
Yeah, these cards where they're a body, but you can sink mana into them, wow, that's big.
Ooh, it's a Reflector Mage even. So Reflector Mage is going to, he's going to take a pain for the white mana. He's going to drop him down to 8.
And now Matthew has to know that Jack doesn't have a removal spell. You know, if Jack had a removal spell, he would have used it right then and there.
Absolutely.
So Jack needs to top deck something good. That creature land is not going to be enough. He would really like to top deck a Radiant Flames right now.
Yeah, man.
So once again, going digging for cards with Read the Bones. He's been able to find what he needed before. 1 top, 1 bottom, so at least 1 card that's good on top.
This needs to be another sweeper. Ooh, there's that Radiant Flames.
Yep. Time to fire that off.
It's going to be for 3, going to clear up the board.
Now, if I could script this any way I wanted, I would want Matthew to just draw a Reality Smasher and just flip it like it's a Bonfire of the Damned Miracle.
Just palms up,
yeah,
face up, face down, nothing up my sleeve.
Yeah.
Going to pass the turn back.
Well, it looks like, well, I guess Matthew could have a Collected Company here.
Jack's going to redeploy that Kalitas. I was going to try and get in with this Wandering Fumarole. He's thinking about it.
I would
changing his mind.
I personally would take the more conservative line and keep that thing on blocking duty. But we'll see. I mean, he does put Matthew on a tight clock if he does attack.
He's got to pass. And
it looks like Matthew didn't draw the Collected Company. Probably just has a land in play. At least I assume that's what Jack is thinking.
Matthew didn't even make a 1/1 on Jack's end step.
Yeah.
He's just going to play a Duskwatch Recruiter and pass the turn back.
Matthew might be feeling a little discouraged at the fierce, steely gaze of Jack Kiefer, the pint-sized assassin. Do you think he's offended that I'm calling him the pint-sized assassin?
I mean, I think he'll be happy. Man, this game has just gone back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah,
do we
it's
have
been a good game.
Do we have a Chandra?
No. I think he only has 1, right?
This is a lot of mana.
Maybe Ruinous Path with Awaken?
Yeah. Oh, man.
And that could be game. Put Matthew to 1 with no board.
I guess it's a good thing he didn't make a 1/1.
Yeah.
Although he would be able to chump here.
I'm still curious to see if Jack attacks or not, because Matthew, like, even if Jack attacks, he can still die to a Reality Smasher on the crackback.
Ooh, that's such a good card to find there. Yeah. Right? It just changes this game.
Actually, I guess with the zombie token, Jack's pretty safe to attack here.
Yeah, he can go to 5.
And because Matthew only has 1 basic forest, he's unable to activate his Duskwatch Recruiter twice.
Oh, and he also didn't have a way to play Reflector Mage without taking damage.
Yeah.
So it's not like he could Reflector Mage, bounce the zombie, and then attack for the win. Wow, that game was insane.
Yeah, it's a really sweet games, but Jack Kiefer is just a Grixis master. Young prodigy taking it down.
Like, he went to 1 multiple times.
Yeah.
He looked like there were multiple turns where I'm just like, how does he's just dead here, right?
You also got to have like a strong gut to be at 3 life and cast
Read the Bones.
you
Yeah.
know?
Your opponent has 3 creatures in play, and you're at
Yeah.
3 life, and you just play Read the Bones.
That is the kind of play a seasoned veteran makes.
One of the creatures at that point was a Zulaport Cutthroat.
Yeah. Yep.